Hi, thank you for coming. It's a bit hard to follow someone like Tim, who's so charismatic, especially when it's your first talk at a WordCamp. Today, I'd like to talk to you about how to protect WordPress user accounts, users on your website. And the reason why I chose this subject is because the most common reasons why WordPress websites get hacked are vulnerabilities, as we've just seen, Tim and Patchstack basically, and compromised user accounts. Uh, before we learn how learn how to protect user accounts, we need to understand why they are hacked. And just to give you some context from a survey we've done earlier on this year, 96% of respondents experienced at least one security incident, 64% at least experienced one security breach, and only 26% trained their team or have been trained. And there is a correlation between lack of user training and hacked WordPress websites, basically. The reason why user accounts get hacked always is quite typical. Weak and shared passwords, bad practices, users sharing passwords, writing them down, sending them over email, and stuff like that, or using the same password for multiple services, which is quite bad practice because if one account gets hacked, then the other services will get hacked. Lack of controls, lack of policies, and no authentication hardening. There's so much technology out there, and we are still relying mostly on usernames and passwords, and lack of awareness and training. So users are not aware of the dangers that are out there. And the reason why we are targeted because we are the weakest link. The user is the weakest link, as Tim pointed out as well. It's mainly because pure security hygiene, as we've just seen, and it's easy to compromise, and it happens to the best of us. Earlier on this year, in March, Troy Hunt, he's the owner of Have I Been Pwned, funnily enough, was a victim of a phishing attack, and his MailChimp list was stolen. And Josh Junon, just a few weeks ago, he's the author of a number of popular libraries. His account he was also a victim of a phishing attack, and his code was injected with malware. His code, basically, his libraries are downloaded around 2 billion times per week, so he's very popular. And when you hack user accounts, of course, even on a WordPress website, you open a lot of possibilities. It depends what role they have and stuff, but it really depends also on what you find on the website, because it can lead to a lot of issues like privilege escalation, or it can ease, basically, social engineering attacks. Getting started with security, first of all, it's a top-down approach. So if you're an agency, if you are a business owner, practice what you preach. So if you want to enforce good security practices and certain policies, you have to practice them yourself. Always assume that most users are non-technical. When we talk about users, you can split them in two, basically. There are the website users who log into your website to help you, like let's say your team. If you are an agency or if you have like a membership website or e-commerce, you have customers, those are different type of users. This mostly applies to your team, although we will see later, you can still apply some things to your customers. And the good thing is that you don't need very expensive software or complicated software to achieve all of this. To cover the basics as well, this is not related to WordPress, up-to-date software, which both talks before this have highlighted. This is not just about WordPress, everything. Any device, anything that runs software, mobiles, tablets, everything has to be up-to-date, and where you can automate. If you cannot, remind your users, remind your team from time to time, drop them an email, simple instructions. Hi, there are updates available, please click here, make sure you install them, etc. But where you can automate the process. Jumping into WordPress, the first line of defense in WordPress is the password, and the reality is that no one uses complex passwords. It's very difficult to come up with secure passwords, especially if you have, nowadays everyone has multiple accounts. It's very, very difficult. And the only solution, like almost everything else nowadays, is to automate the process. And the way you can automate the process, there are a few steps which you can do. First, you can apply on your WordPress website password policies. You can use plugins. These are all the plugins I'm mentioning in this presentation are all free. WordPress plugin security, password policy manager, password policy. There are a few other plugins, of course, available. And yeah, basically, you enforce the policies. Once you enforce the policies, it's not enough because, as we said, even if you enforce the policies, users will find a way around it, will find a way how to use some sort of patterns to come up with strong passwords, but they are not strong enough. And that is where password managers come in. Password managers, for those who are not familiar, are basically online service or software where you can store. They have two rows. Basically, you can store all your credentials in one place, so users only have to remember one password, which makes life much easier. And basically, most of them have password generators, and this is where you automate. So basically, you are enforcing strong password policies, and you are using automated password generators. So you have already automated that process. The good thing as well is that with password generators nowadays, most of them, they have extensions to browsers. So users, all they have to do whenever they need to reset a password, change a password, create a new account, is just click a few buttons. They don't have to do anything else. What's very important, of course, is when you are choosing software, choose something that is intuitive. Don't let guesswork. It happens even if we are using automatic password generators. Sometimes you apply to a new service, you write a password, you generate a password, and you get a notification, password not secure enough. What is not secure enough? So it's very important when you're using software or developing websites for your customers, make sure it's very intuitive. Like in this case, the screenshot from WordPress login security, you can see there are the requirements that the user's password need to meet. The ones in green are the ones that have been met, and the red ones are the ones that have not been met. So now we have automated the whole password. So by using policies and by using password managers, you automate the process, and you have already solved the issue of weak passwords and weak credentials. The good thing about password managers as well is if you need, ideally not, but if you need to share credentials, it's much easier because password managers, most of them have actually functionality that allow you to share passwords securely. The next step, now that we've taken care of the passwords to FA, again, don't just rely on passwords. These are also free plugins, WP2FA, two-factor authentication. There are quite a few plugins available out there. And same as before, use intuitive solutions. One thing that's very important as well is whenever you apply something new, like password policies, you add 2FA. Inform your users. It's especially in security, when you are adding something new, or you are adding friction to the process, you are asking the users to do something else. And users, especially if they are not technical, if they don't understand why, it frustrates them and you get a lot of pushback. It's very common. So when you explain to the users what's coming up, what they need to do, why you are doing it, they will comply with you and they will help you solve your issues. Because it's not their responsibility to keep your website secure, it's yours, but you also have to help them help you, basically. In fact, talking about users' awareness, I see it quite a lot. Many site administrators kind of have concerns about 2FA, like, oh, what if users get locked out? The good thing is the plugins that I mentioned and all plugins nowadays have what they call primary and secondary methods. So the idea is when you use 2FA, when you are configuring 2FA, you configure two methods. You have the primary, usually it's a one-time code over from a mobile application, or over email, and then you can have the secondary method, for example, backup codes. So if, for example, someone turns up to work, they forget their mobile ran out of battery, there are other ways how to log in. So, but as I said before as well, it's very important, I cannot stress it enough, to keep the users informed. Otherwise, whenever you're adding these new things, as I said, it frustrates users, it slows them down, and you get a lot of pushback. Yeah, I need to take a sip of water, it's a reminder for me. Now that we've seen the passwords, we've solved the password issue, we are using 2FA. There are some other things which you can do on your website. These are like additional. So by solving the password issue and 2FA, you're already kind of like in a very good position in general. But you can also limit failed login attempts. For example, it's a very common practice on WordPress websites. There are two ways how to do it. You can block IP addresses or lock user accounts. I personally prefer to lock user accounts because blocking IP addresses is a bit of a cat and mouse game kind of thing. Like there's a huge pool of IP addresses that you can use. And then it depends really how deep you want to go. Like these are all extras. But as I said, this mostly applies to your team, not to your customers. If you have an e-commerce solution, you can deactivate public password resets. I know of companies which have very strict policies, and password resets are only approved manually by administrators or the NOC teams. You can as well, these are again optional and depend if your team works from a fixed location or not, but you can also add HTTP authentication and restrict IP addresses to the backend of WordPress. You can find quite a lot of information about these things online. You can do it yourself via htaccess or via the zip panel of your web host, or there are plugins which do it for you as well. And very important, if you are allowing access to third parties, it's very common. You need a developer from time to time, maybe, or a designer. Ideally, don't share passwords. The reason many websites have old accounts, they create an account with admin access, they leave them there, they forget about them. Those are like problems, are all extra doors for attackers to attack, basically. Use plugins like MelaPress Login Security or Temporary Login without passwords, and you can generate a one-time link, for example. You can send it to the third parties, and you can actually control how long this link is valid for, or how many times it can be used. And it's a much safer way, so you don't have to maintain or keep any old user accounts. In fact, maintaining user account management is also kind of why we see a lot of compromised accounts, because people create accounts and they leave them there. They forget about them. The question is like it depends how strict you want to be, but should you apply all these policies to all the users? It really depends. In a utopian world, yes. In reality, not really. Definitely, administrators or users who have access to change things on your website, to change the behavior, functionality of your website, they should definitely have very strong policies. If you have, for example, an e-commerce website, membership website, the clients, not really. Depends, again, what type of access they have in terms of managing their payment data, etc. But for example, nowadays, it's very easy to implement auto email to FA. So whenever a new customer has registered, they automatically they don't have to configure anything. The next time they log in, they receive a code via email, basically. So you're already adding something extra. And then, of course, we've covered the login process. So users have logged in. We're using strong passwords. We are using 2FA. And now the next step is post-authentication, which is also very important. Who can access and what once they are logged in? And this is where user roles come in. Basically, user roles determine what users can access, what they can do, etc. on their website. And the good, actually, I have an exclusive today for all of you in regards to user roles. Not everyone needs admin rights. It's a bit of an exclusive because we see a lot. It happens a lot. Everyone creates a lot of users on their websites. Everyone gives them admin rights. It's understandable because admin rights, of course, once you have admin rights, you're going to complete whatever you need. However, the reality is you don't need to. And this is where you need to use the principle of least privileges and use plugins to create custom rows and assign multiple rows to users. The principle of least privileges is simple. So basically, a user doesn't need to have access to more things or less things than what they need to do. It takes some time. So for example, if a new member joins the team or you have a number of people who do a specific task, you create a custom role for them and let them do their work. Now, in the beginning, of course, there's a bit of back and forth because they're going to try to do something. Maybe they don't have enough access, so you might need to play a bit around and give them access, etc. But once you sort out, it's very good. Once user roles, if every user has exactly enough permissions to do what they need, that's very good when it comes to security, technically, compliance, because it even affects compliance. Like users, for example, shouldn't be able to access data that they shouldn't have access data to, that they shouldn't have access to, like customer data, etc. So it's very important. And to do these things, again, there are a lot of free plugins. MelaPress Role Editor, User Role Editor, which is a very popular plugin, actually is quite good actually as well, and Publish Press capabilities. There's a good selection when it comes to user role capabilities of plugins. Just to give you a bit of scenario ideas, for example, if you have an e-commerce solution, a commerce website, you have typically, it depends on the size of your team, but you have part of the team who manage the products actually, like stock quantity and stuff like that, like store managers. You have people who manage orders, so they only access the orders and customer data. And you have the marketing team that needs access to on-page SEO. You can easily give everyone admin access or store admin or whatever, but it's much better if you give them, if everyone gets access exactly to what they need. So the product management team only, for example, manages the stock quantity and stuff like that, and the order processing only manages customer data and orders. very common as well with agencies and clients. Basically, in my opinion, if you are an agency and you are responsible for the security and upkeeping of a client's website, the client shouldn't have admin access. You are the admin. So you can create roles for them that allows them, for example, to change specific themes, maybe update the theme and the plugins, but not to install new themes or, for example, change the website settings or any settings that can change the behavior on the website. So this is very important as well. This is where user roles come in. And we see a lot of problems as well where customers make changes and there's the back and forth backslash with the agencies, who did what, etc. So user roles can save a lot of issues as well, and they're good for security. So we've covered the basics, secure passwords and password managers. That's all automated. That's covered. Add some sort of two-factor authentication. There's also a few other options nowadays with passkeys, etc., like passwordless solutions, and use user roles. There's always more you can do, especially when it comes to the user, which is educating users about best practices. Now, not everyone is going to be a security expert. However, by enforcing some security best practices, you can achieve quite a lot. Some obvious ones or some best practices, like you should tell your users, have some sort of manual, remind them to avoid public networks. It's very common, unfortunately, especially nowadays with remote workers and everyone traveling. Always use VPN, I'm not sure if this network is secure. Ideally, always use VPN. It makes life much easier. Credentials hygiene, as we've seen, use password managers, use certain functionality to share passwords, or use one-time links and stuff like that. Recognize potential attacks. Not everyone needs to be a security expert, because even if we've seen everyone falls for these things, but at least users should have an idea of what a possible phishing attack is, what are the repercussions, what is spam, what is social engineering, and these type of attacks. They should have at least some basic awareness of what are these type of attacks and how people execute them, basically. Secure file handling, which is also very important. I've seen most people download any type of attachment. I've seen policies in companies quite efficient. So basically, most companies, for example, don't send attachments over emails. They share them over specific links and specific drives. So basically, if you receive an email, for example, which could be a phishing attack from that company that has an attachment, most probably it's either a phishing attack or it's something malicious. So by following certain best practices and implementing them, even you as an agency, that can help you and your clients and your team as well. And it's very important as well is to advise your team and the people on how and where to report any incidents and suspicious activity, because it's also very important, because you as a business owner, as an agency, as a team manager, it's good to know when there is something suspicious so you can take action right away and the users can report it right away. Otherwise, if it's not reported, it keeps on going by, and usually when this happens, attacks can escalate. There have been companies, even like high-profile companies, where it took them months, 6 months, 8 months to realize before they were hacked, basically. And of course, we all forget we are all humans. One of the most effective methods, you can write as many manuals as you want, employee manuals and stuff, but keep repeating yourself. Keep sending the occasional emails. If you have meetings, drop hints, and keep users in the loop. Advise users, and it's very important, keep users in the loop, because the more you keep them in the loop, the more they claim ownership of their project, and the less pushback you get, the more they comply. Because especially when it comes to security, whatever we do, some way or somehow, you are kind of like changing the process of how people do things, and they feel it's slowing them down and it frustrates them. So keep the users in the loop. So basically, that's all about it. If we implement the right systems and automate the process and educate the users, we'll be in a good position. It's not everything, but we'll be in a good position, and most websites will be secure. If you scan this QR code, you can go to a page, you can download the slides, and there's also a link to all the plugins I've mentioned. I'm Robert. I'm the CEO and founder of WordPress. Thank you very much.